Good afternoon. Welcome to the .bank webinar for securing your brand. Welcome ICBA, members of the banking community. I'd like to start off as a primer for banks interested in .brand domain name extension and introduce your presenters to you. Our first presenter will be Viveka Ware, ICBA Executive Vice President, responsible for regulatory policy for the ICBA, also a board member of the FTLD Registry. Then we also have Craig Schwartz, FTLD Registry Managing Director, managing .bank and .insurance domain registries. He's also former Chief Registry Liaison with ICANN. John McElwain, partner of Nelson Mullins Riley in Scarborough, focuses on intellectual property litigation and strategy. Voted one of the best lawyers in America from 2013 to 2015. He's also Vice Chair of the Internet Committee for the International Trademark Association. And finally, we have Thomas Barrett, President of Encirca, first .bank accredited registrar, founded in 2001. He is the sole registrar serving on FTLD's Security Requirements Working Group, also a trademark agent for the Trademark Clearinghouse. And our agenda today for the webinar will be an introduction to new GTLDs, .bank policies, trademark protection, and how to secure your desired domain name. I'd like to remind you that if you have any questions, please enter them into the question widget at the bottom right-hand side of your GoToWebinar application. We will hold all questions till the end and then answer them all. At this point, I'd like to hand it over to Viveka Ware on the introduction to new GTLDs.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you join us today for this first ICBA Encirca webinar on the exciting new .bank generic top-level domain. As many of you probably know, the number of GTLDs will balloon over the next few years. They'll go from what was just under 25 a few years ago to thousands. And we're pleased that the financial services industry will have two new GTLDs, .bank and .insurance. .bank is launching in May, which is just around the corner. .insurance will launch in the fall of 2015. Today's program is going to focus on .bank. Now, in order to register for the new GTLDs, you must be registered, you must use an accredited registrar, such as Encirca. Now, how is .bank different? Several years ago, once many in the industry knew that ICANN was expanding the number of top-level domains, they had the foresight to look at ways of further securing the online presence for the financial services industry. And so we came up with .bank. .bank is a community-based registry. Well, .bank is owned by a community-based registry, FTLD. There is strict eligibility criteria. Domains must correspond to legal names, and there are strict verification and security requirements. Now, the benefits of .bank. .bank is designed to be a trusted, protected, and more secure location for online banking services. It establishes a solid foundation on which a bank can securely communicate with customers, stakeholders, and regulators. And it's poised to be the recognized platform for growth and innovation in the financial services sector. And over time, you will have the opportunity to weigh in on ways that this can reach the expectations. Now, ICBA's role in .bank. ICBA is very pleased to be a founder of FTLD, the register operator for .bank and .insurance, and we're also pleased to offer today's joint education with Encirca. We also have worked with Encirca to come up with preferred pricing, and this pricing includes applying to the Trademark Clearinghouse if applicable, or applying for Sunrise applications if applicable, and then general availability applications, and then website and email activation services. So bottom line, through the relationship, it'll take you from point A to point Z as you prepare to roll out Dot Bank. And now I'll turn it over to Craig Swartz.
Thank you, Viveka, and thank you, Tom, for inviting FTLD to participate in this webinar. We, of course, welcome every opportunity there is to connect with interested banks to make sure that you have the best information you need so you can make an informed decision about how and when to participate in Dot Bank, and ideally to have as smooth a registration process as possible. And if you're going to be working with someone like Encirca, then it's their responsibility to make sure that happens for you. So I'm glad that they're putting on the seminar today along with ICBA. Today I'll be reviewing slides 9 through 13 that are all core features of creating a Dot Bank that, as Viveka mentioned, is trusted, protected, and more secure for banks and their customers. And the reasons we're confident in making these claims lies in the heart of the operations of Dot Bank. That is controlling who gets in, what domains they can have, and how domains must be operated. So I'll move on fairly quickly through the following set of slides. Slide 9 speaks to the who can get in, and Dot Bank is primarily for banks and their trade associations. We may also permit some industry service providers, such as core processors and some regulators, but all entities that come in as a processor or as a regulator must be approved by FTLD's Board of Directors. Move on to slide 10, which talks about our strict security requirements. And these items, again, speak a little bit to the who can get in as well as how domains must be operated. The first two items talk about mandatory verification and re-verification, and that is to ensure that when a bank makes a request for a domain name, that the person doing so is an employee of that bank and that they are authorized to make that registration on behalf of the bank. The other component of the verification piece is to ensure that the domain name requested is eligible by that bank. So that's part of ensuring the integrity of Dot Bank. There are also a number of enhanced security requirements that we require, and those requirements apply to FTLD as the operator, to registrars such as Encirca, as well as to the banks who are the registrants in domain. And it's these extra security requirements that contribute to the high trust and more secure nature of Dot Bank. I won't go into too much detail, but DNSSEC, email authentication, and enhanced encryption are all required with the goal of mitigating the abuses that many of you experience and that banks generally experience with online bad actors. Multi-factor authentication is what will be provided by Encirca to you as a customer if you choose to register names with them. And it's their means for protecting access to your registration data, so nobody can alter it other than someone authorized by your company. And the prohibition of proxy and privacy registrations is to prohibit the ability for a bad actor to hide behind false or fake information. Moving on to slide 11, which talks about our name selection policies, and this speaks to what domain names banks can have. And we do operate a very restrictive registry that your domain name must correspond to your trademark, trade name, or service mark of the business, and must not be a reserved name. And reserved names can come in a couple of different forms. Some are mandated by ICANN, such as country names or territory names. And then some, as you can see towards the bottom of the slide, are common community and generics, and those are created by FTLD Registry. Common community names are identified both on our website at ftld.com, but also on the Encirca website at the URL that's in the slide deck. And slide 12 is an extension of the name selection policy, which is intended to give you some examples of what corresponding means when we talk about a corresponding domain name. If you look at the policy, the registrant eligibility policy on the FTLD.com website, it gives probably a number of more examples, but I think you get the gist that we're not, our goal is not to deny a bank of having a domain name that it's eligible for. So it's why we've crafted this corresponding rule to provide a little bit of flexibility in how you choose to select your domain names. Moving on to slide 12, which is, slide 13, which is the verification process, which I mentioned a little bit earlier in terms of mandatory verification and re-verification. The reason we have this is to protect the security and integrity of .bank. We have contracted with an independent third-party service provider, Symantec, to do this on our behalf. They will be the ones collecting information from Encirca or other registrars, doing the verification, and ultimately calling your bank to conclude the verification, again checking that the person who's requested the domain is a full-time employee, that they're authorized to request domains on behalf of that bank, and that the domain name or names that they've applied for are ones which they are eligible for. So I will conclude there and turn the mic back over to either, I guess we're going to move on to John McAway now with trademark protection.
Hi everyone, thank you Craig. First I want to thank everyone for attending and thank ICBA, FTLD, and Encirca for inviting me. I'm going to discuss today the intersection of trademark law with the .bank program. And what you've already heard and what I will cover is that primarily in two areas. First is going to be a sunrise or a priority registration period. The second is going to be with respect to eligibility for registering in the .bank space. I would additionally note that having a trademark is a good idea for protecting your bank name or your brand online, but that really does go beyond the scope of this presentation. When talking about priority registration for trademarks, there's really three steps that are set forth here on slide 15. The first is to have a trademark or file a trademark with the Patent and Trademark Office. In most cases now, because of the time limitations that we have, it's too late to obtain a U.S. trademark registration. It usually takes about a year or maybe a year and a half to obtain one, so it's too late for the .bank, but not for other legitimate purposes. If you do have a registered trademark, the next step is to submit that trademark to the Trademark Clearinghouse through an agent like Encirca. And the next step will be to then apply for a domain name that is an identical match to that trademark during the sunrise period through an ICANN accredited registrar for the .bank program, and again, Encirca is one of those. We'll move on. So the Trademark Clearinghouse is an independent entity established by ICANN to be a repository of trademark registration data to operate programs such as a sunrise or an early priority registration. To be eligible for a sunrise registration, you must submit an application to the Trademark Clearinghouse that is a registration certificate registered on a national level like the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office or another country for a word mark. A word mark may sound like it has to be just standard characters, but it can include words that are separate from a design, so keep that in mind. The trademark must be registered at the time of validation. It cannot be an application. You can also submit a copy of a court order if you've ever enforced your trademark rights. What is not eligible are common law marks or unregistered marks, or a trademark that contains a TLD such as .com, or even a trademark that contains a period. You can move on. Additionally, to be eligible for a Sunrise registration, you have to submit a sworn declaration of use to the Trademark Clearinghouse when you're making that application, and you must submit a specimen of use. For many banks, I've been using just a simple screenshot to show that the bank is operating under the mark that they are submitting to the Trademark Clearinghouse. What's not acceptable would be things such as email messages, licenses to use a mark, or a business card. It needs to be something that shows that trademark being used in connection with banking services. Move on. So to recap, the Sunrise period is going to be restricted to people who have obtained a trademark registration in the Trademark Clearinghouse and have been issued what is called a signed mark data file that will be provided to you by your Trademark Clearinghouse agent. There is still time to get validated into the Trademark Clearinghouse. However, that time is running out. Typically, it takes about 1 week to process an application. So with the launch of .bank coming up, you would want to have your application in before May 10th. Keep in mind that the allocation during Sunrise is still on a first-come, first-served basis. So it will be advisable to get online as early as possible upon launch to get a registration in the Sunrise period for the domain name that you want. Keep in mind that the corresponding rule that Craig spoke about does not apply during the Sunrise period. During the Sunrise period, the .bank domain name that you are seeking must be an exact match to the mark that you have registered in the Trademark Clearinghouse. Thanks, and I'll turn it back over to Tom.
Thank you, John. This is Tom Barrett from Encirca, and we're going to talk about the phase that most of you are eligible for and talk about a little bit about the mechanics of the process you need to go through to apply for your .bank domain name. Next slide, please. So as John mentioned, the Sunrise period is limited to registered trademarks that have been accepted by the Trademark Clearinghouse. And so if you have a registered trademark, you are able to submit that to the Trademark Clearinghouse today. Also, as John mentioned, if you want to file for a trademark, it's probably too late certainly to do that. It is too late to do that in the U.S. If you feel strongly about that, there are some countries where you can get a fairly quick turnaround time, and you can follow up with John about that. But we are suggesting that if you have a trademark, you do complete the Trademark Clearinghouse process by May 10th. Again, we have seen clients that have pushed the boundary there a bit, but best practice is recommending you get it done before the start of Sunrise period. Now, the way these registration processes work for both Sunrise and general availability is that it's first come, first served. And so if there's more than one bank applying for the same name, whoever gets there first is the winner. So that's a very important point to remember, both for Sunrise as well as for general availability. And because there are multiple registrars like Encirca who are supporting .bank, it's possible that banks from anywhere in the world are applying for the same name that you're interested in. So there are no guarantees that your application will be successful, even if you've gone through a pre-screen process with someone like Encirca. Next slide, please. So general availability, as we say, it starts on June 23rd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. we are suggesting that instead of you planning to be at your keyboard at that particular time so you can be first, that you work with a registrar like Encirca, get pre-screened so that we know ahead of time not only that you're eligible, which all of you should be, but also that the names you're asking for are going to be approved by Symantec. Since allocation is first come, first serve, what we will do is to create an application submission queue so that your name can be submitted the minute that the bank is open to accept that application. We also will prepare you for the verification process that occurs after we submit your name, which includes requiring your HR person or supervisor to receive calls for verification. Next slide, please. So pricing for .bank from Encirca is $999 a year. This includes both verification and registration. And there will be a refund if your application is not successful, minus a $200 processing fee. The good news is that all ICBA members do get a discount for being a member of the ICBA, and that discount is approximately 10%. In order to reserve your spot in our submission queue, however, we do need to receive payment. In fact, the order in the queue will be based on the order in which payment is received for your applications. And so you can pay by credit card, as the way most registrars operate. We also do accept check or bank wire, but clearly you want to make sure you give yourself some extra time for your internal approval and payment processes so that you can get that payment in and be in our queue in a timely manner. Next slide, please. So just a quick preview of how the pre-screening process works. This is what Encirca is going to do. And what happens is we'll ask you for all the information that Symantec will be asking for. We'll make sure that the names you're applying for are eligible based on your bank's legal name or brand names that you might have in use. And once we receive payment, we will automatically put that into the queue so it's automatically submitted at the start of general availability. If you happen to ask for a name that someone else has also paid us for, we will let you know, and so you have the option of applying for a different name or going to another registrar and trying your luck there. And so we have a special landing page that we've set up for ICBA members. The first step is to fill out a pre-screening sign-up form. We will then send you a more in-depth questionnaire that you can fill out so that you can reserve your spot in that submission queue that I talked about earlier. Next slide. So we've given you a lot of information, but to maximize success of your application, because a lot of names are fairly common, not only across the U.S. but across the world, we recommend you start the process early. This will allow you to determine what names you actually want to apply for and make sure they correspond to your legal name. We'll help you determine if you will have competition. So, for example, we can tell you if there are other trademark owners that are banks who are participating in the trademark clearinghouse so that they might have priority over you if they apply during Sunrise. Or perhaps there's no competition for you in the clearinghouse and your competition occurs during general availability. So that's our overview for today.